Yeah, welcome to the session here and greetings from Switzerland. First of all, thank you very much for having me here today and thank you for giving me this opportunity to talk about, I think, a very important topic, artificial intelligence in project management. So I'm sure you have heard about artificial intelligence in project management already a lot. I mean, there's a lot written about this. I mean, it is certainly a very trending topic. And I think actually there's nobody in the project management industry who haven't heard really about this yet. So surveys actually say that the majority thinks that artificial intelligence will have an impact on project management practices. But at the same time, a lot of people wonder how this actually should work exactly. So I do not really know how to get started on this or what to expect exactly. But I mean, the first question really should be why we would need AI in project management in the first place. What is it actually that AI should solve for us? I mean, project management at the end is a people business, right? I mean, with real people doing the work, we engage with team members, project stakeholders, we negotiate timelines, budgets, we influence people, we steer, and yeah, we lead, right? So what is this all about with the AI topic? And I have heard already many times exactly this. This is just academic theoretical thinking. The reality is actually different. It is simply not possible. Or this maybe still takes 10 years before we actually will use AI in project management. So there are clearly a few questions to answer here. So first, why do we need AI in project management? What is the problem statement exactly? Then second, how would AI actually work in project management? How would it help us? How can it be used? And third, what do we need to do to get started on this? How do we prepare exactly? But let's start with the why question first. I mean, why project management really needs AI in the first place? So to understand that better, let's look first at a couple of examples where things didn't really go too well in projects. So in 2015, the Spanish bank Banco Sabadell bought the UK-based bank TSB, I believe, for about 1.77 billion British pounds. And as a result, has initiated a plan to merge the bank's IT systems with its own banking software. So work on this started in 2016 and 2 years later, actually in 2018, 5.4 million client accounts were migrated into the new system. And only hours after the migration, problems have started and up to 1.9 million TSB clients, I think, who use internet and mobile banking, they were locked out of the system and they could not access their accounts anymore. Incorrect payments were automatically placed, credit cards blocked, funds randomly shuffled around across accounts. In short, it was a massive disaster. Huge losses, obviously, for the bank. I have actually read about a total loss of about 330 million pounds. And of course, furious customers with thousands of them having cancelled their accounts. Another example of an epic project failure, which is actually quite embarrassing for me myself, unfortunately, since I am originally from Berlin in Germany. So I probably should not really use this as an example, but it is a perfect example for or how a project can turn into a massive disaster. So this project started in 2006 and it was planned to get delivered in 2011, so a 5-year delivery timeline. And to date, that did not really happen. In fact, the delivery date got changed, I believe, about 10 times or so. And at least once it was changed just a couple of months before the planned delivery date, or even just a few weeks before the planned delivery date. Costs exploded. At some point, there were discussions if they should not start all over instead of fixing their problems. In short, another epic failure. And now, 9 years after the originally planned delivery date and a cost overrun of close to 100%, the airport is due for opening next month, I think. So let's see, right? So those two cases here I've shown, I mean, those were obviously some really extreme examples where projects dramatically failed. But unfortunately, those are not just some outliers. So if you look at this chart here, I mean, this chart shows statistics since 1994 for IT projects specifically, as per yearly studies and surveys conducted by an entity called the Standish Group. And they ran statistics for about 40,000 IT projects. So I believe it is reasonably representative. And as per those statistics, the best run we ever had, that was in 2013, when 41% of IT projects were successfully delivered. That means as per defined success criteria. And that means the lowest failure rate we ever had in a year, there was 59%. And that certainly is truly shocking. And unfortunately, I mean, IT projects are really not the exception here. I mean, the University of Oxford conducted a research in 2015, which indicates that we see way too many project failures across various industries. I mean, although those numbers here specifically refer to the cost targets of projects only, those numbers are again really shocking. I mean, how can it be that not one single Olympic Games event project gets delivered on budget? Those events really aren't new, so shouldn't we know good enough by now how to successfully deliver such projects, meaning also on budget? And it is even more shocking because there were so many updates to project management guidelines as published by the Project Management Institute. I mean, the PMBOK, for example, or the Association for Project Management in the UK. We also got the Agile methodology introduced, not to forget, which focuses mainly on technology projects and also aim to improve project success rates. But yet, we do not see real improvement, actually. But then we need to understand the root causes for this ongoing problem and those low project success rates. So why do projects really fail? And project failures are ultimately based on wrong decisions. I mean, when you look at the reasons that were given in a survey conducted here by PMI in 2018, you find numerous issues that were triggered by wrong decisions. So, for example, inaccurate task time estimates. That's listed here as a reason. I mean, have we been too optimistic with our estimates and not considered any critical dependencies, for example? Or another one, inaccurate requirements gathering. Did we hire a BA who simply is not suitable for this particular project? Maybe overall a very good BA, but not suitable for this particular project. So we basically can link most of the provided reasons to wrong decisions. But what we see here are actual symptoms of a much broader issue that we are facing in project management. So those reasons here are basically the consequence for more fundamental failures in how we run and manage projects. So we have to get to the root cause of the problem to get things under control eventually. And one significant factor, of course, is the human bias. I mean, it is simply human nature that we are driven by numerous cognitive biases, which, however, make our view very subjective. I mean, there's actually a broad range of cognitive biases, and I have listed here the most common biases in projects that I think are most common, and also for project decision making. So one thing is the planning fallacy, for example, that describes our tendency to underestimate the amount of time it will take to complete a certain project task, as well as even the costs and risks associated with that task, even if we have evidences or experience that would tell us differently. And when things go wrong, we often put the blame on other factors, such as delayed start dates or sick days or anything of that sort. Then we have a sunk cost fallacy. I mean, this is a classic that often keeps projects alive, although they actually should be cancelled or terminated maybe because of not generating the expected benefit anymore. But often we hold on to such projects because a lot of effort probably was spent already, and we don't want to have all this effort wasted. So we want to have our efforts pay off, right? I mean, think about this when, for example, you order too much food. I mean, you order pizza and you simply order too much, right? And then you overeat because you have spent money on all that food. So because you have spent money, so let's eat it, and you want to get your money's worth back. So this is something how it can be compared approximately. Then we have a confirmation bias. That's a very common bias in projects. I mean, for example, when one is in favor of a certain idea or a certain solution and is specifically searching for information and evidence which backs up such idea or solution, disregarding any other information that potentially would give a different direction. And the status quo biases, I mean, those are characterized by the typical statements such as, yeah, we always have done it that way, so why change it? So summarizing, I mean, cognitive biases have a big impact on decision making in projects. And project decisions today are mainly driven by intuition, by experience, and often also by political motivations. And take the RAG status of a project, red, amber, green. So there are so many different definitions out there, what those colors actually mean. I mean, try to Google it yourself and see how many different definitions you will get. And even if you have defined the RAG definitions up front for any of your projects, I mean, that's obviously the best practice, right? You still get into management meetings, like steering committee meetings, for example, where you hear things like, I think the project is rather red and not amber, or the project is green but trending amber. I mean, it is almost ridiculous how many different views and flavors could exist for a project status. And this is ultimately the result from human biases. One other issue and root cause is what we generally refer to as big data, alias the increasing amount of information that plays a role for projects and actually should be processed and taken into account for the proper management of a project. But with our current means, we simply are not able to cope with this flood of information in projects. I mean, it's going way beyond our human capabilities. Having more information and data as it is projected here, that's actually a good thing, as it should help to decrease the level of uncertainty. More information, more informed decision making, right? More accuracy and less uncertainty at the end. So think about managing risks in projects. With the amount of data out there, we certainly should be able to get a much more accurate picture on risks and issues. But instead, we are only capable to capture a subset of information. Therefore, our decision-making ability has been compromised already and kind of outruled already by the amount of information that is out there. And as big data gets bigger, it becomes actually harder, not easier, for employees to extract truly valuable insights from it. I mean, people have to extract the signal from the data while there's more and more noise or useless data at the end. And with more and more data, there is a need to look at data more frequently. And looking at more data more frequently increases the likelihood that we are misinterpreting data, seeing maybe patterns that actually aren't there, and we end up making a bad decision. And such insights are actually based on writings by Nassim Taleb in his book, Fooled by Randomness. I can recommend that, in case you're interested to read more about this. But the point here is that the more data we have to deal with, the more we are running into challenges to not only process all that data, but also to identify the actual relevant information in data. It becomes a challenge that we are not able to handle anymore because of the massive amount of data and information. And in project management, which is a decision-making business, so to say, where we rely clearly on data and information to make informed decisions on a daily basis, we more and more lose our ability for just that, informed decision-making. And as a result, we make more and more bad project decisions, and more projects are actually failing. And as a result from those shortcomings, we are facing a risk of risk myopia, a term that I borrowed from David Hilson, the risk doctor, who specializes on project risk management. And what this means actually is that project managers are becoming more short-sighted by focusing mainly on risks that are closest to them, alias that they are only capable to capture within those boundaries of their human abilities. And with the combination of that increasing amount of information to be processed, as well as the impact from cognitive biases, your risk of risk myopia is slowly turning into a massive project issue. We probably can even say that this is already a standing issue in any project right from the start. So those issues are definitely not new. A lot has been written about cognitive biases as well as information overload, which specifically impacts decision-making capabilities. But so far, we have struggled to properly address those shortcomings, especially in projects where it is becoming more and more challenging, especially with the increasing amount of information. And this is where artificial intelligence can help by collecting the necessary data and information towards data-informed decision-making. So is that really a revolution for the project management practice, or rather a necessary evolutionary step, a natural addition, so to say, to traditional project management techniques? Some may think that AI is just another tool that will support the project manager with day-to-day activities, basically just automating a few things. In a way, similar to such tools as Microsoft Project, a modern project planning tool, basically, that would help the project manager to become more effective, more efficient. Or maybe a new methodology, like the Agile methodology, which aim to improve project success rates. But really, make no mistake, artificial intelligence will be certainly a revolution for the project management domain, as it significantly will change how we run and deliver projects. AI will basically close that existing gap that we cannot address ourselves due to our natural human limitations, as I mentioned. And we are truly handicapped at the moment and often make bad decisions in projects, which then often lead to project failures. So what is needed to reduce risk and uncertainty in projects? And this can be achieved through better handling of the amount of information. But let's first clarify the difference between risk and uncertainty. So risk is where we can leverage historical data and use analytic techniques to provide a basis for decision making. So there is a confidence that the future will be somewhat like the past, and the probability of a threat or an opportunity can be calculated from existing data. And one risk category is the condition of known nouns, which means that we have a good understanding of the chances for an event to happen. It means we can properly calculate the probability of a risk, similar to the chances of throwing a 6 with a perfect die. In that case, that's 1 in 6, right? So it's pretty much easy to calculate. And the condition of known unknowns is characterized by the lack of reliable data and underlying information, which therefore limits us when it comes to assessing the probability. In this case, we can leverage statistical data about certain events in the past, and this way we can actually make an assessment regarding the probability for a certain event to happen. Then the unknown known is actually a state of uncertainty. So threats or opportunities were identified by others, but that information is not available, and therefore it's not visible to the decision maker. And this is usually happening when information is not being shared in organizations or when we operate in data silos. So the data is there, but it stays within a certain group and it's not being shared. So the decision maker in a certain project does not have that knowledge about that information. The unknown unknown, that is another state of uncertainty where any threats or opportunities, they have not been identified and no information is really available. And this is where black swans, that means risks that are of high impact but are fully unknown. That's where those are placed actually. There are, however, numerous cases where it is debated if decision makers shouldn't have known about certain events that are categorized as unknown unknowns. For example, with hindsight, the September 11 attacks in New York probably could be categorized as known unknown, as it was known to a certain degree that such event likely would occur. It just wasn't clear when, where, and how. And the same could be said about the current COVID-19 pandemic, actually. In summary, any threat or opportunity can be placed somewhere between the certainty and impossibility scale, and clearly the more information we can get about a threat or opportunity, there will be higher confidence to respond to it. And the highest confidence obviously exists here for known nouns, as this can be calculated with a certain confidence. For all these other conditions, it is rather a matter of judgment. And what is usually lacking today in projects, that is a reasonable amount of information to make such judgment. And the result is an increasing amount of unknown nouns and unknown unknowns. And consequently, it results in uninformed decision making. And this is where artificial intelligence can help by collecting the necessary data and information towards a data-informed decision making and a sound judgment call. So at the beginning of a decision-making process, when we formulate the problem, we have a high uncertainty and a high risk in the project in this relationship here. When we collect information and assess the different solution options, we currently are usually not able to reduce the risk to a certain level that we are comfortable with. Mainly because we may have overlooked something essential, as we could not really collect all the relevant information, along with the human biases that also contribute to the problems, as I have outlined earlier. And by taking an AI-supported approach for decision-making, where we can take advantage of the clear strengths of artificial intelligence to discover and collect all that relevant information, we significantly reduce the risk of wrong decisions. At the same time, we will reach decisions much sooner due to the speed of the data analysis that are conducted by AI algorithms. So AI assists in providing the necessary data and recommends action based on pure facts and data. Decision making, however, should not be done by the machine alone, and human input is still required, as you can see here, as it should address other relevant factors such as the human emotions and human intuition, etc. At the end, projects are still pretty much people-driven, with people doing the work, people who have emotions, who need to be led and managed. And that's why it requires the human input and judgment. But AI should lay the foundation to ensure that the human judgment is based on all that relevant information, so that a truly data-informed decision-making can be established. And that means we need to effectively marry the two. Meaning the fact-based, data-driven and bias-free machine intelligence on one side and the subjective human assessment on the other, forming a hybrid intelligence for project management. So on one side, we need to take advantage of the machine intelligence and its capabilities to crawl through massive amounts of data, analyze that data, and find patterns, determine solution options, and make bias-free recommendations. And on the other, we need to consider our clear human strengths in terms of leadership and people management skills, as well as intuition to some degree, so emotionally driven thinking. So we can therefore say that the machine intelligence, or AI, facilitates the judgment call by identifying and providing all necessary information to get to a truly data-informed decision-making process. And this is an essential point in AI for project management. Machine and human complementing each other and building a hybrid intelligence. So this looks all interesting, you may say, but the question remains obviously how to implement all this, right? So where do we start the journey to become more reliable with our decision-making in projects and ultimately also more successful with project outcomes? So we learned about the importance of data, how we can take advantage of it, and how AI can help us with that. What is key is how we can turn project data into knowledge and value for projects. And this basically follows the general approach of information governance, which is a process or an activity in an organization to properly process and manage information or all information assets in an organization. And the key elements of information governance activities, those are the ones shown here. So we need first to connect to the data. We basically need a central point from where all the different data assets and information can be located. So locate all the data sources for project data and make them accessible and centrally available. Then discover. We need to understand what type of data that actually is. So it is not enough to identify a certain file type or document or image. We need to also understand the content of it so that we can categorize it. And that could be a project schedule information, project estimates, risk data. That's where data actually becomes information in that step. And based on this categorization, we can decide if such information should be migrated to another location, or if it should be archived, or if it should stay where it is. Project data should be stored centrally so that other project teams can query such data. So kind of a data store with self-service access. And once we have that, we need to manage the data. And that's what we usually understand as records management. In managing the data and the information, that means here to capture the details about where the information actually is located, where it resides, who owns the data, and what it is exactly, etc. And the last step is where insights from information are being produced by applying analytics. So we do information analysis, we generate insights and feed that into decision-making processes. And along with the human input, as I've mentioned earlier, such information becomes actual knowledge and produces actual value for projects. But to ensure that project data is properly captured and managed, a sound data strategy is also a key element to transition to this new project management approach. So as you often hear, data is nowadays a very valuable asset to organizations. And consequently, also project data needs to be treated as a highly valuable asset, especially in project-driven organizations. So the aim is to improve the maturity and quality of project data so that the decision-making in projects can be improved and the project uncertainty decreased. But to achieve that, various questions as part of a data strategy need to get answered first. So for example, where do we get the data from? Which systems are we using? Are we using Microsoft Project, for example, or Excel sheets, or any specific project management tools, or any information system? So this is what I meant before by connecting to data. Is all project data captured in systems? Are there any gaps in how project data is being captured? How can we access the data? Are there any restrictions based on certain policies? Any cross-border restrictions maybe, or data privacy issues? I mean, for example, resource employee information that we want to capture. That could be really interesting actually for project management purposes. But this could be a sensitive discussion with HR and legal departments in some cases. But really make no mistake, a data strategy is essential towards a data-informed decision-making and project management practice. It needs to be tailored to your organization though. Your data sources also and your capabilities, it needs to be all flowing into this tailored approach, let's say. It is key and it is a prerequisite to make data-informed decision-making actual work. And to transform project data ultimately into knowledge, as we have seen, and feed that knowledge ultimately also into decision-making processes, a data analytics capability needs to be built up in your project organization. And that usually requires 4 stages to achieve really a mature analytics capability. Going from that initial descriptive analytics to then more prescriptive analytics, which then would enable teams to actually predict the impact of future decisions, and this way determine an optimal solution for problems at hand. And prescriptive capabilities use predictions based on historical project data to give insights ultimately on possible future challenges or opportunities. It can provide recommendations and it can find the optimal path forward, and therefore it can help organizations really go a step further in the decision-making process. So a truly data-informed and analytics and AI-driven approach to project management is really fundamentally different from the traditional approach. And it requires a significant shift in the project culture and generally speaking, in the decision-making culture in organizations. I actually have read about surveys which say that 85% of companies are trying to be more data-driven or make more data-driven decisions, but only 37% have actually been successful. And what usually is in the way is the missing adoption of a new decision-making culture. And ultimately, it is not only about technology, but also about cultural and mindset changes. And the change in skills and decision-making processes, that is an evolutionary process. I mean, clearly at the beginning, there will be resistance to move to a data-informed decision-making approach. There will be certainly a lack of trust in statistics and technology, and decision makers will be highly skeptical. And that's why it is important to create the maximum of awareness and transparency regarding how we come actually to certain analytic findings and predictions. So the reasoning part, or the showcasing part, let's say, that will be critical as trust needs to be built and gained. Then the second step is kind of a pilot run of all this before the analytics-driven approach then later on will be rolled out organization-wide. So this step should serve for executives and decision makers to learn to rely on past data, making them more comfortable with the analytics-driven way of decision making. It is actually the stage where the ones involved in the process get a grasp of data analytics and how it is being used in project management. And in a third step, the approach will be rolled out with a structured use of analytics, and that will be across various departments first that are interlinked in a way, with a disciplined decision-making process being followed. And this stage also would be characterized by finding the right balance between the usage of leveraged data and information and the knowledge and management experience for sound and informed decision making. So this is kind of the hybrid intelligence way, and you balance that out, so you test that out where the right balance is actually the right fit for your organization. And in the next step, we scale the decision-making approach across the entire organization with more data being used for decision-making. And this may result also in using more advanced AI models for autonomous learning. And it is needed to continuously improve this whole approach by constantly assessing the maturity of the decision-making and the underlying data-driven approach, as well as any technology that drives this. I mean, ultimately, it is an evolutionary construct that is also driven by technology advances and evolution. So this is a proposed approach which is inspired actually by known practices as observed through surveys conducted, for example, by Harvard Business Review. However, introducing analytics and AI-driven project management, that requires a tailored approach to the specific environment in an organization. It is, however, clear that in any case, such new approach will change organizational project cultures and the way how projects are being delivered in an organization. And the benefits from such transition are truly significant. I mean, the human bias will be removed first when it comes to collecting the relevant project information, with AI and machine learning playing out their strengths to deal with the massive amounts of data, analyzing such data, identifying all the critical information, and this way contributing to the high project planning accuracy. And uncertainty will get reduced significantly as decisions will be based on relevant data and not only a subset of it. We actually can capture a much wider spectrum of risks and issues, and this way can respond much better to risks and issues. Efficiency. I mean, so far, a lot of time has been spent with identifying and sourcing necessary project information, and yet information is incomplete. Project managers' valuable time will get freed up by this for other activities that are actually the human strengths and that should be focused on people management, leadership. And with a true hybrid approach, combining the strengths from both human and the machine, that will give a boost towards better project success rates. So projects will become better under control and project outcomes can be predicted in a much more confident way. So what is the result? Financial savings and ultimately also competitive advantage through improved time to market. So such analytics or AI-driven approach in project management is clearly a revolutionary approach, as I mentioned. And initiatives in this direction are actually kicking off already, with data analytics and artificial intelligence already entering project management practices in some organizations. And we can expect a lot more to happen over the next months and years, especially because we urgently need a change in the approach how we run projects. So it is critical that project professionals, as well as project decision makers, get familiar with this approach as soon as possible in order to stay really competitive. And there's a popular slogan for the digital age, which says, data is the new oil. And we simply need to act on it, especially in project management. So thanks a lot for your attention, and I hope that this was somewhat insightful to you and helps you to initiate a change in the delivery of projects in your organization. And if you're interested to discuss this topic any further, maybe even your specific journey within your organization, I would be more than happy to hear from you. So here in the deck, in the material, you will find a bit of information about myself, including my contact details. So please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or send me an email. I'm certainly happy to hear from you. Thank you very, very much. And if you have some immediate questions, I'm happy to answer those right now.